Both the City of Toronto and the province of Quebec have battled with Ottawa over funding for asylum seekers. Now the City of Brampton, Ontario is doing the same. Last November, an asylum seeker died in the Peel region trying to stay warm. Ottawa has offered about $7 million to help build a reception centre, but Brampton's Mayor Patrick Brown says the costs for that centre are going up and the funding falls short. I spoke with the Mayor a little bit earlier this morning. Mayor Patrick Brown, nice to see you again.
My pleasure.
You are looking for more funding from the federal government for a reception center for asylum seekers. From what I understand, they've given you $7 million, but the project is still in jeopardy. What do you need here to get this done?
Well, the starting point of this conversation with the federal government is municipalities have never assumed the cost for asylum claimants. The region has been in existence in Peel, covering Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon for 50 years. I think the most we've had before in our shelter system was 2% of the beds being used by asylum claimants. For the last year, we've been at over 70%. And we just need to make sure that expenses are being returned. Municipalities are not allowed to run a deficit. And it means right now, the situation we're in is to fund what is a federal service, we have to take from other critical services, whether it's public health or transit or emergency services. It's just not sustainable. Last year, to deal with this influx of asylum claimants, we submitted $26 million in expenses. We have received $10 million in return last year. This year, we're already on pace to have expenses to north of $60 million, and there's no promises of any of these costs being returned post March 31st. So we're concerned. We want to have the infrastructure to support these asylum claimants. I think it's horrendous that you have people sleeping outside in tents in a country as prosperous as Canada, but the current model is broken.
So tell me, we obviously, as I was saying to you before, we've talked a lot about the situation in Toronto, a lot about the situation in Quebec, which is partly why the government put the visa process back in place for people coming from Mexico. How does your situation compare, and do you have a sense of how people are getting to your city and why they're coming there?
Well, we do have Pearson Airport right in Peel region. And so, I think the minister's done the right thing by having agreements with the City of Toronto and Montreal. But I think it's short-sighted not to include Peel region, given the highest volume of asylum claimants seems to be originating in Peel region. The asylum claims are largely coming from 5 countries in Africa, and the asylum claimants are ill prepared for the nature of a Canadian winter. And so we've had 2 fatalities already this winter. It's been a very mild winter. I'm worried that it could be more. We're getting all the right promises from the government saying help is on its way. We proposed with Mayor Chow last year to have a welcome center associated with Pearson Airport to help handle this influx of asylum claimants. But the pace of government, as usual, moves at a snail's pace.
Is there anything that the province should be doing for you in terms of helping deal with the shelters and people looking for places to stay?
Well, so listen, I'll take help from anyone if it's the provincial government that can help. This has largely not been a space where they have helped in, and so when it comes to immigration, refugees, asylum claimants, that we've always had that relationship with the government of Canada. So the approach that our Mayor's Caucus and the GTA has taken is to really focus on the federal government to make sure that, for whatever reasons, visa rules have changed and allowed for a greater number of asylum claimants. They've got some responsibility here. I am being told that because of the tightening of visa requirements, that the numbers should go down. But here's our problem, Rosie, is that right now this program to help municipalities with asylum claimants goes until March 31st. You want to get a building set up for a shelter. You're not going to get a lease for 2 to 3 months in the GTA market. And so, we're really struggling being able to get the infrastructure set up. And so largely what's happening right now is we're using hotels, and that's even more expensive. And so I just wish we had a more tenable model to use to make sure that no one dies outside of a shelter.
I think your council has discussed raising property taxes, which is something Mayor Chow in Toronto talked about as well. And I have to say that raising that as a potential issue did seem to work for her in terms of unlocking some funds from Ottawa. Is that something that you may have to put on the table if you don't get some confirmation from Ottawa?
The Region Appeal did raise taxes last year. We're having a breakdown on March 21st of the totality of all the cost, and the costs continue to escalate. But I don't think it's fair to put on the backs of municipalities. We don't want anyone to die outside of our shelter system, and so we've continued to run a deficit to support this life-saving operation. But it's just, for me, it's bewildering why the federal government wouldn't assume the entirety of this cost. And frankly, when there's been other issues around the world, they have. For me, the model was how we've stepped up to help Ukrainian refugees, and I'm glad Canada did. We've got support and funding to make sure that everyone that came into Peel Region was able to get a hand up and transition into our community. That is not happening with these asylum claimants from Africa.
Would you, just last point, I imagine you have voiced a desire to see something in the budget that's coming in about a month's time to try and deal with some of these issues.
Yeah, we've had numerous meetings with Minister Miller, and he's great. He's listening. He's always willing to hear our concerns. He's promising help, but really we have to get this infrastructure set up. And so what we need more is empathy and a minister willing to listen. I would love to see the government of Canada commit funding to make sure the infrastructure is in place for as long as this surge in asylum claimants is going to be the case in Canada.
Mayor Brown, good of you to make the time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.